Hello, everybody. Welcome to your Thursday WOTS Weekly Feature. Happy Earth Day. Today, we're going to be celebrating Earth Day by learning about our place in local ecosystems and how we can connect ourselves to the environment for a greater sense of belonging. I'm Sienna Tristan, and I will be your host. WOTS Toronto operates on land that is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Anishinaabeg and Allied Nations to care for and share the resources around the Great Lakes in peace. Today, especially, we should spend some time contemplating how we can each live up to that responsibility. We encourage you to learn about the land you live on, wherever you're tuning in from. So today, our guest is Mariko Uda. Mariko is an ecologically minded author and illustrator with a background in biology, chemistry, architecture, and engineering. She's long been involved in grassroots environmental groups in Toronto, and her PhD in civil engineering at University of Toronto focused on designing for resilience. As ecomariko, she aspires to write informative and delightful books that educate, inspire, and empower the general public. Welcome.
Thanks, Sienna. I'm happy to be here, and especially on Earth Day.
Yeah, it's pretty serendipitous, huh? So I would love for you to kick us off by telling us a little bit about how you got into this line of work. Like, that is a beautiful laundry list of specialties between the bio and the architecture and the city resilience. I'd love to know a little bit about what inspired you to get into these fields.
Well, I guess when I was probably around 13 or 14, I learned about global warming, and then I read Silent Spring, I think in grade 9, and that affected me a lot. And then in high school, I read a lot of David Suzuki books and also learned about First Nations teachings. And I don't know why, but I got really into the environment. And so when I was young, I wanted to be like an artist or a writer. But then in high school, I got more into the environment. So then I studied biology and chemistry to learn more about the environment and, our own bodily health. And then I realized science helps us understand a lot of things, but a lot of the problems and the solutions are in how we design our cities. So I got into civil engineering, and then with the architecture, I kind of harkened back to some of my art interests, and I was all into green buildings and things like that. And then so cool. When I did my PhD, it all kind of came together because I was drawing from my science, engineering, and architecture. And my PhD was on how to design sustainable and resilient neighborhoods for futures, deal with future shocks and stresses, including climate change. And then I guess during my civil engineering studies, I learned about how our water systems work, how our sewage systems work. And I thought, well, this is really neat information. And I thought, we should all know this stuff. And so I had this idea to write this book, or actually it wasn't a book. It was more like PowerPoint presentations. So over the years, I would do PowerPoint presentations kind of talking about our water, sewage, stormwater systems and energy too. And then in 2019, I was like, okay, I got to write this book. So it was starting to become a book in my head. And I got to write this book, and this is the year to do it. And so I booked, it was spring, and I booked a table at Word on the Street back in
it all comes
spring.
Back around.
And then I started writing I started writing my book. So kind of booking the table at Word on the Street kind of gave me my deadline. And then all summer I worked on it, and I got the book done and printed like 2 days before Word on the Street. So this is, so Word on the Street actually helped me get it done because I booked the table, and it gave me a deadline and a goal. And during the summer, I took an animation course, like how to draw cartoons. And so that really helped. And so my teacher, Fayez, he really kind of encouraged and helped me with the drawing, like in terms of how to draw. So that's kind of where I came to be where I am now.
I love that you put a deadline on yourself by giving yourself like a like a no holds barred, like if you don't have it at this point, it will be a catastrophe because you've laid down the table and people are expecting you. And I think there's a lot of value in, especially with things like climate and the environment and these big things that everyone's like, oh, I should know about this. Oh, I should take these actions. And then like stuff gets in the way and you don't do it. To have that kind of like, no, for real this time, like it's going to happen because it has to happen and because it's important to share these things. So I love that. I love that we were able to help you like hold to your own standards that way. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. So the book in question, the book is called Where Does It All Come From? Where Does It All Go? Subtitled Toronto's Water, Energy, and Waste Systems. This is a very Toronto specific book. I would love to hear about like where does it all come from? Where does it all go? Like it already inspires the curiosity. It inspires the questions. I'm really curious about what you have to share with people about, especially Torontonians, but also city dwellers in general, about the systems that impact our lives every day that we don't even really think about.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you can show that first slide.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Let me get that going. Here we go.
Yeah. So for my, okay, that's the cover of my book and a blurb about it. The next slide. Oh, that's the cover.
Cover. Yeah. Here we go.
Okay. Sorry, maybe skip to page 7.
7.
One more.
6, 7. Oh, now I'm getting the hang of it.
Okay, there. That's it. That's it. So this is the table of contents of the book. So at the top, so we have water, which is the tap, and then the toilet is sewage, and then we have stormwater, and then we have electricity, natural gas, and garbage. So the book goes through all of these systems, and since we only have a short time today, I can't go over all of them, but maybe we can start with water.
I think water is really fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next slide. Right. So this diagram shows where our water comes from. It's a little small, but at the very right-hand side, you see Lake Ontario. So we have deep intake pipes. So the water comes from a deep part of Lake Ontario, and then it comes to a water treatment plant. And at the water treatment plant, you have screening, and then you have some alum is added and it forms flocks, and then the flocks are settled out, and then you have filtration. That's with all the little dots. The fourth stage, that's filtration. And then the last stage is chlorination, and then the water leaves the water treatment plant and goes through the city to us. And to do that, it requires pumps. So there's pumping stations throughout the city. And those are what those 3 things are. Those are pumping stations. And then as it gets closer to our neighborhood, there's all these reservoirs and tanks in our city. So the water may go, it might go straight to your tap, or it'll go sit in a reservoir for a while and then come to our taps. And
now those are mostly underground, right? Those reservoirs?
Yes, mostly underground. There's 4 that are above ground. So, and the reservoirs are needed because if we didn't have them, then the pumps would have to kind of go off and on, depending on us turning off and on our taps. So it would have to kind of respond in time. But because you have the reservoirs, the pumps can actually pump more consistently, and then we draw from the reservoirs. And also pumps can then go at night when none of us are really using water at night.
The night showerers out there are like,
well, okay, some people are, but so the pumping can happen at night too and fill the reservoirs. So that's why we have the reservoirs. So this is the path of our water. So that's how our water gets to us. And actually the next map, the next page shows a map. So you asked about reservoirs. So all the blue rectangles, the dark blue rectangles, those are underground reservoirs. And I actually live very close to one on St. Clair. Winston Churchill Park is a reservoir underneath. And so that's why this park is like kind of rectangular. And it has no trees because the tree roots would get into the concrete and perhaps cause problems.
Damage the system.
Yeah, so Winston, and the soil is not that deep. That's covering the tank. So, that's a reservoir. And there's a bunch of them like that in Toronto. And then you can see the little tanks on stilts. Those are the above ground tanks. So there's about 4 of them. And the light green stars, those are the 4 water treatment plants. So we have 4 in Toronto. And you see the little cat up there. The cat is saying, if you live in the northern part of Toronto like me, then your cup of water took more energy to get to you than someone, say, who lives at Harborfront. So, and all those little blue circles, those are pumping stations. So there's pumping stations throughout the city. You can go see them. So with this book, I'm kind of encouraging people to get to know their infrastructure. And especially now during this pandemic, we're all kind of stuck in Toronto or close to home. You can't go on vacation anywhere or stuff.
Travel.
So actually you can, kind of get to know your local infrastructure as kind of a way to travel and explore in your own city. And and I'm also encouraging people to see our water that's coming out of our taps as Lake Ontario. A lot of times we turn on the tap and we just think of it as H2O, as a commodity. But we can start thinking of it as a lake, like at the very start of so there's a picture in my book. It says, so you may think that, you may think that Lake Ontario is far away and you have only a visual connection to it. Like I ask kids when I talk in classes, like, when's the last time you saw Lake Ontario or you were near Lake Ontario? And they say, oh, maybe a month ago when we went to Harborfront or whatever.
Like, Ron, you're drinking it right now.
Yeah. Did you wash your face today, or did you take a shower, or did you drink? So so it says, so you think you only have a visual connection to it, but actually you're in touch with it every day. You're showering in it, you're drinking it. And the next page says, in fact, if you're 60% Lake Ontario,
if you're 60% water,
if you're 60% water, you're 60% Lake Ontario. So we're all kind of like walking vessels of Lake Ontario. And so it's really a part of us. And so, I just realized, like, well, at the start of the book, I say, once upon a time, we knew exactly where our water came from. And I have a picture of a kid in the water, kind of, in touch with the river water. And there's that feeling of sacredness. But then somehow when we come back home in our, in the city and we turn on a tap, like we've lost that sense of sacredness. It's become a commodity. So I want to kind of, by explaining how the infrastructure is, help people kind of visualize that, hey, this is Lake Ontario. And so, people could put a little sign by their tap saying this is Lake Ontario, stuff like that. So I'm trying to kind of awaken that connection again.
I love that. I think that's so interesting. I read this yesterday, and like for the last 24 hours, I've been delighted by the new knowledge, or like the reawakened knowledge that like my tap water comes from the lake, and like the shower water comes from the lake. And just the thought of like, oh, this is the lake. It's very different from, I don't even know where I thought it came from. Like, who knows, but it wasn't there, or it didn't, the connection wasn't so clear. So I think it's already changing my perspective and making it a lot more of a relationship, so I think it's brilliant. So tell me, I've already obviously given my tiny piece here for how this has changed my perspective, but why do you think that the ordinary citizen should be acquainted with these systems, or like know what's going on with our infrastructure? How does it improve someone's daily life to have this knowledge?
Right. So I sort of, my first feeling when I was like thinking of writing this book was like, this is like basic knowledge and we should all know it. Just as basic living beings, because we rely on our water to be alive, and our sewage, and
breaking up just a little.
the rainwater that fall. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm back.
We're back.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So it also helps us be responsible citizens in that we start to understand how the systems work. So then we see our part within the system, and we can see maybe that, oh, well, what I'm doing is not good for the environment or not good for Lake Ontario, so I'm going to change it. So, for instance, with sewage down the toilet, we should only be sending the 3 Ps: pee, poop, and toilet paper. And we shouldn't, pharmaceuticals shouldn't go down the toilet. Floss shouldn't go down the toilet. And those flushable wipes, even though they say flushable, should not go down the toilet. They actually clog the system. So by understanding how the system works, we can be better participants in the system and, help take care of the lake and rivers that take care of us. As well, I'm thinking of all the challenges that are coming up with climate change and all these environmental challenges. So I don't think it's enough for just engineers to understand how these systems work. Like, we have to have an eco transformation kind of in our society. So in order to have that, we have to have the general public, more people kind of understanding how things work. So that's another reason. And then my third and my most favorite reason is that I think it's good for us psychologically and spiritually to be connected. For me, like to this morning, I kind of did a Earth Day kind of prayer to say thank you. And so I kind of went through all the things, so I pictured the water coming from Lake Ontario, and that's coming to my tap, and it's gone through pumps, and then I pictured my sewage, and I know which sewage treatment plant my poop goes to because there's a map in the book that tells you. So then I can picture, okay, now my sewage is going there. Thank you for that. And then my stormwater, there's a watershed map in the book, so you can figure out which river is your river. So I know that my river is the Don. So it's like I know that my rainwater landing on the roads in my neighborhood are going to the Don. And I kind of said, thank you for taking our water, and sorry that it's not in the quality or quantity that you like. So kind of, and I'm able to point to and actually say things to specific places.
Yeah.
And then my electricity, I know where that's coming from. My natural gas is coming from fossils that have been underground for I don't know how many years, and those fossils are warming me right now. Like, we're having a bit of a cold spell in Toronto.
We sure are.
Those fossils are warming me, and they come from Western Canada, the natural gas, and then the Gulf of Mexico area, and Ohio, Pennsylvania. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, all of these things are coming and supporting me. And so kind of being able to be connected, I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm here. I'm connected, and all these things are supporting me. And so I say in the book, once we know where it all comes from and where it all goes, we are no longer lost and alone, but strongly grounded in our knowing of exactly how we are connected to our natural environment each day. So I think it's psychologically and spiritually very important to be connected to place. And so I'm hoping people reading it will kind of start to think of their connection to place. And during this pandemic, when we're all kind of stuck in Toronto, like kind of learning to love where we are and learning about our connections and feeling connected in that way. So that's my last good reason for why we should kind of know where things come from, where things go.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that especially, like you say, during these very isolating times, it's a really good time to befriend all of the non-human beings that are around you all of the time. So that whether that's your houseplants, or maybe you have a container garden, or your local water sources, or, you know, things that you can be in relationship with without worrying about, you know, a stinking virus. Stuff like that. So I totally agree. And I think it's a really worthwhile project for everybody. So lastly, we're about to run out of time, but just real quick, because you're an expert, what are some of your recommendations for how readers, listeners can improve their relationship with their environment? I'm talking on like a daily basis, you know?
On a daily basis.
Yeah, just like the kind of small, you know, shifts that you can make to get closer with that.
Right. Well, I guess it's asking questions. So the questions here is, where does it all come from? Where does it all go? I mean, you could get the book, but, you know, even if you don't get the book, you can start just asking, you know, the things that you're using every day, where is that coming from? So the book just focuses on water, energy, and waste, but, you know, you could write a whole other book on food. Where does our food come from? Where does, yeah, so starting to ask questions and talking about it with other people, and kind of that would bring things up in your awareness. And in the book, and I mentioned it before, is you could put signs up around your house saying, like, when you find out where things come from, where things go, like next to your toilet, I have a sign that says, this goes to Ashbridges Bay sewage treatment plant, and then the lake. So
yeah, not into like a nameless void, but a place that has a geography, for sure.
Yeah, like I really think it's important to be specific, and then that can then become a relationship, because to have a relationship, you have to have a name, a specific entity. So as I said in the book, there's a map on which sewage treatment plant your poop is going to, so you can figure out which one exactly. And then, you know, if it comes up in the news or you hear about it or whatever, you say, oh, that's my sewage.
That's mine. I love that.
And river, that's very important. A lot of people don't know what watershed they live in. And a watershed is kind of the area drained by a certain river. So, I mean, spring is here, summer's coming up. It's great to find out, using a watershed map, which watershed you're living in. And then you can go visit your river and get to know it and find out ways to take care of the river. And basically what you don't want to do is put things on the road that go down the catch basins, which go to the river. I don't know if you have time to show that slide of the river. It would be page 21. But it shows how when water lands on our roofs and on our driveways and our roads, they go into the catch basin by the side of the road, and that goes straight to the river in most cases. So I just have one picture I want to show you.
Got it.
That shows you the visual. Right, so there you see all the water coming from the roof, driveways, and roads going to catch basin, and then it goes, there's the pipe underneath the road, and it goes to the river. And you can find out which river by finding out which watershed you live in. So
this is the map.
Project.
Yeah,
that's the watershed map. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you so much. This has been so informative. You've packed so much information into just like 20 minutes. So I'm inspired. I'm going to go find out, because I live in Hamilton now. So I'm like, where's my river? We have like 100 waterfalls. Which one is the, you know, and obviously also part of Lake Ontario. So I'm excited to go find out what my maps look like. So thank you so much for such an inspiring conversation. All right. And that will conclude our Earth. You all for tuning in. Thank you all for Tuesdays as well. Where does it all come from? Where does it all go? The book is available from Mariko's shop at ecomariko.com. This has been today's WOTS Weekly Feature. You can tune in next week for our very exciting Poetry Week. Can't go through April without doing a Poetry Week. We are going to have some conversations and some workshops with ARC Poetry and the League of Canadian Poets. For discounts and deals, you can check out toronto.thewordonthestreet.ca/weekly-features. This has been great. Thank you all for another wonderful week, and we'll see you soon. Happy Earth Day.